You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
Hello and welcome to episode 167 of Making Tracks, brought to you by those fine folk over at fanfortracks.com, the only new site to eventize Star Wars each and every day. My name's Mark. And of course, joining me this week is a man who is, well, literally the legend that is Mr. Mark Newbold. Mark, how you doing, buddy? How's your week in Star Wars been?
It's been eventising left, right and centre, basically. Great fun.
Your co-host?
Yes.
Good. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, it's been pretty good for me as well. I actually managed to sneak in a full viewing of the original trilogy at work. I say at work as in, like, I put it on and wasn't interrupted whilst it was on, so that was quite helpful. But apart from that, yes, it's been fairly quiet, actually. No troops this weekend for me, but enjoying the sun, so it's not all bad.
Saw Across the Spider-Verse today, which was, so good. Lord and Miller, kind of a Star Wars connection, and a few other faces. I won't say who, because there's kind of some cameos in there, some really surprising cameos,
okay.
One of which is a big-time Star Wars cameo. Nothing to do with Star Wars, it's one of the actors. Phenomenally good film.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear.
Have you had any new stuff in your collection this week?
No, nothing for me. I've been looking for something, but I haven't found it in the right quality.
Oh, okay. What is that?
So what it is, and it's a little bit controversial, if I'm honest. I say it's controversial. From a certain point of view, there's a little bit of controversy behind it. So in 1997, like Hasbro Kenner, they put out a commemorative edition box set that basically celebrated the handing over of Hong Kong back to China. It's a standard Power of the Force 2 figure, so you've the one I'm looking for is the one which has got, like, monkey face Leia and hench Luke and fairly hench C-3PO. But the box has kind of got like a more of a cityscape, but it doesn't necessarily look like Coruscant, but it's just random. It's called a limited Hong Kong edition. And I was just like, somebody else posted it on Facebook the other day, and I was like, that's one of those kind of really cool, really niche things that I need to get.
Niche things are good. I'm also on the lookout for something that you would, I guess, consider niche. With Young Indiana Jones coming to Disney Plus in the States, not here, it's on iTunes here already, but coming to the States, obviously interest in that has kind of expanded and grown, and so it's back on people's radar. So, and back on mine. So in my Indiana Jones collection, I've got quite a few Young Indie books and comics and different bits and bobs, more than I realised, actually, when I had a look at it. One thing I hadn't got was any Young Indiana Jones computer games. I've got loads of indie games going way back to ZX Spectrum and all sorts of really old stuff. Now, I never had the Sega Genesis. I have no plans on owning a Sega Genesis, which means I'll probably never play Instruments of Chaos. But the box is gorgeous. And as you know, to me, the box is half the collectible. It's as much as the thing that's
absolutely.
in it. So I've managed to find somebody in Canada that has a nice copy of Instruments of Chaos that's not breaking the bank. Much like your own, I'm exactly the same. I've had nothing come in this week. Nothing at all. We're bad Star Wars fans.
Yeah, we are, because I know there are actually some listeners, I think they almost live slightly vicariously through our savage collecting habits, and so they may not necessarily collect as much as we do, or as frequently. They, I think they quite enjoy listening to what kind of random crap we've picked up during the week.
And we are the experts at random crap, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. I hold my hands up to that. Anyhow, what about the news? Have we got some news?
We have got some news. We've got some more audio from Star Wars Fan Fun Day, but we'll kick off. It is now June, of course. Half the year's gone. How has half the year gone? And we're only a couple of months away from Ahsoka. We're only a few weeks away from Indiana Jones. So we're heading into a busy time period now for Lucasfilm product. First things first, Empire Magazine is out next week. They focus on Ahsoka. In that issue, they've already revealed some of the content that Star Wars readers will be reading. One of which, and I thought this was fascinating, was obviously in animated Star Wars, and you saw a Lothcat, it was a CG Lothcat. When you saw the Lothcat in previous episodes of Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian, it was a CG Lothcat, but the Lothcat for Ahsoka is a practical physical puppet built by Legacy Effects, very much in the vein of Grogu, or Din Grogu, as you should say. Have you had a chance to have a look at the Lothcat yet? It is up on Fantha Tracks. I think it looks phenomenal.
I have, yeah. I think it's pretty cool. I quite like that. It's a decent take on what a real-life Lothcat would look like. Quite a fun little kind of addition.
I wonder, given that when you watched Clone Wars, there was plenty of creatures that came into it. Obviously, the Convery as well. Mm-hmm. The Lothcat is the prominent one, you would say. And larger creatures, Filoni's a big kaiju fan, so things like the Zillo Beast and stuff. Maybe we'll see something like that in Ahsoka. I don't know. But I always like it when they can do something impractical. I mean, mostly for the actors. And it does feel ILM have just done a big rebrand this week. They've changed the divisions of what ILM is slightly and renamed them. So X-Lab is now immersive and different things have come along. And it's a smart move in the sense that if you've got stagecraft, for example, we interviewed Vivian Lyra Blair on Planet Leia. I say we, Claire and Johanna interviewed Vivian. And in there, she mentioned being on the stagecraft floor and looking at the balcony, looking over Alderaan as was, and she could actually see Alderaan. And as she says, they embellished it, of course, in post-production and added extra elements, but she says, I'm there looking at Alderaan. And for an actor to actually see it must enhance their immersion in the moment so much, which I think Ewan kind of said the same when he talks about stagecraft. He struggled with the green screen and the blue screen of the prequel trilogy, but found Obi-Wan a much more fulfilling experience. And now you've got a real-life Lothcat. They're all very impressed. It does help, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. And it goes all the way back to those behind-the-scenes content from Attack of the Clones, back in, 2000 and 2001, where, like you said, Ewan McGregor was struggling with the blue abyss that was Kamino and Topoka City, when pretty much all of that was blue screen.
Yeah.
And you could imagine, for somebody like Vivian, who's kind of coming to Star Wars, obviously she's a very bright and savvy person. Acting is basically the quintessential play make-believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in fact, you get paid for it, which is amazing. And actually see exactly what they're talking about. How easy and hard is it to take an abstract image and try to kind of explain it to, anybody, be it an experienced actor or even like a 10 or 9-year-old, for them to understand what it is that they're meant to be seeing. Because obviously, if I describe an environment to you, you're going to have your own kind of preconceived notions of what that actually is.
Totally.
But then to actually see it kind of makes it that so much more kind of fun for everybody and obviously immersive.
When they were making the prequel trilogy, like you say, Samuel L. Jackson said he enjoyed it. Christopher Lee said he enjoyed it. But Ewan, who was the younger member of that trio, who you would expect to have got modern technology more than the older guys didn't enjoy the process. And I just wonder whether it was an aesthetic thing and it's just all that green and blue literally hurt his eyes, or whether he just couldn't immerse himself, even though his uncle was in the original film, played Wedge, and same age as me. So he's totally the right era, the right generation to be completely invested in Star Wars. When he got cast as Obi-Wan, he ran around his garden having a lightsaber fight with Noel or Liam Gallagher or somebody, some silly story like that. You would imagine that he would have been the one that would have chewed that up. But in fact, I think he was the one that struggled the most. So when you come forward to now, and I think going forward in productions generally with the modern Star Wars, it definitely helps ILM visual effects team because they're doing all the work in advance. The world is laid out. So an actor goes into a predefined world. And I make this example for a good reason. Vivian Lyra Blair was in, I think it was We Could Be Heroes, the Robert Rodriguez film that was on Netflix a couple of years ago. And he's known for filming pretty much everything on a green screen or a blue screen and then deciding what's going to be there after he's filmed it, which is very much the opposite of what he would have worked on Book of Boba Fett, where pretty much everything was worked out in advance. What do you think's preferable? I mean, personally, I think having it all laid out and designed in advance makes all the sense because the actor knows what they're walking into. But what do you think?
I mean, I guess obviously you have a rough idea how it's going to look, but to kind of leave it to post-production, which is always a dangerous thing. And this is coming from somebody who works in post-production. And everybody says, that famous saying, isn't it? Fix it in post if something's not quite right. Oh, damn it, we need this scene now set in nighttime. Oh, we can do it day for night in the grade. Yeah, you can. But if you've got the option, fix it on set, which is always my kind of rather snarky kind of comeback. And to be fair, and this will be the interesting thing to find out about, is a restriction. Obviously, you are shooting with a full backlit environment, really, when it comes to this the stagecraft. So you've got kind of screens and stuff. That obviously does mean if it's not correct or something has changed, then does that mean you've got to go and reshoot, or is there tracking data in the the cameras that you can maybe replace for backgrounds a little bit easier? I mean, that's an interesting question that we should chuck to like ILM next time we speak to him, because obviously, you are kind of locking yourself in, and we know like George was very much a filmmaker and director from the edit position.
Sure.
Him and Ben Burt in the prequel trilogy, they were splicing people's performances and doing animats around the two different kind of performances and retiming and resyncing reactions and stuff to get the performance that George wanted. I would think, and the reason why I think Christopher Lee especially was okay with all the blue screen is just because he's like a massive Tolkien fan and massive fantasy fan, or he was. I could just imagine he's already been versed in that environment. He's spent his life reading Tolkien and trying to extrapolate in his own mind what the hell Orthanc looks like and what the hell the Shire is and stuff like that. And potentially it could just come down to the type of acting that Ewan McGregor did up to that point, grounded and very abstract, but also very visceral films like Trainspotting, whereby everything is there. And I suppose in the same respects, Samuel L. Jackson comes across as being slightly more kind of like laid back like that and would just be able to run with it. Could be a number of things, obviously. It could just be like Ewan McGregor's kind of like even now, even after he'd kind of really set his store and really kind of stamped his presence on the character with the Phantom Menace. He's really leading Attack of the Clones, whereas you could kind of say Liam Neeson was really leading Phantom Menace.
Yes.
And therefore, like, maybe there was just a bit more pressure. Maybe he's thinking, like, I really need to pull off this performance, and actually I really need to feel like I'm engaging with what I'm seeing. And I think I even kind of struggled trying to get it in my head when I first read The Heir to the Empire with all the Spardy cloning cylinders and Mount Tantiss and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's just like, okay, I think I know what it is. I think it's kind of like a Bacta tank, but, it could be something completely different. Coming back to your question, there's going to be pluses and minuses for each thing. And I suppose if you are an auteur director like Rodriguez, and you've got a certain amount of clout that you could make changes right up to the last moment, why not do it? I've always felt like the step towards using the volume, as long as it's done well, I think is a much more positive thing.
There was another piece of news that was snipped out of Empire magazine, which again, as I say, is out on sale 8th of June, so later on this week. Dave Filoni did talk a little bit about the character and where we find her at the start of the show. Dave says she's a wanderer at this point and in a lot of ways wary of any organisation as such because of the power that comes with it as a group. Understandable given her history with the Jedi, if nothing else. She walks a path that basically died out a long time ago and there aren't that many like her left, if any. So that's a lonely thing. What is that life like? If you're a loner, you have a very small circle of friends. What is it like then when he tries to open back up? So he's given us a bit of insight into Ahsoka. It's hard to judge. It's hard to really discern what we're going to see when the show starts proper. We've seen clips from the trailer. We don't know whether that's from the first couple of episodes, like a lot of shows do now, or whether it's clips from the whole thing. What's your kind of feeling? Because we have seen her in Mandalorian, and then a little bit further forward in Book of Boba Fett when she's there as Luke's training Grogu. Will I see you again? Who knows? And off she goes, which is a nice tease for Luke to potentially turn up in Ahsoka, I guess, if they want to do that. Mm-hmm. Where do you think we're going to find Ahsoka? It is hard to judge, but what's she got to tell you?
She will probably struggle. I don't want to say pride, but I just wonder if she's just so used to counting on herself that she may find it difficult to reach out and ask for assistance.
Yeah.
She's happy to wander around the galaxy, and it must be an interesting existence, but also quite a lonely one. You get used to that after a while, so then trying to open yourself back up and allow people in will become very difficult, I think, as you get older.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting to see how that shapes her path and also the kind of conversations and scenes that she has with the Rebels crew, who she does know, but obviously from the trailer, it kind of seems like there's been a fairly large stretch of time where they haven't seen each other.
That does seem to come across, and I mean, we saw those final sequences from Rebels, which is around about the time of Mandalorian, when you see Ahsoka and Sabine, and again, in Empire, there is a shot of Sabine, once again, in her outfit. One thing I wonder is, horrible to say it, the late Ray Stevenson, who plays Baylan Skoll, who we don't know whether he's an adversary, whether he's a friend or foe, really. The vibe is that he's an adversary because they look like they're going at it, but we don't know where their relationship starts. So to your point about her being essentially a loner, and she did rely so much on especially Anakin and Ben during the time of the Clone Wars, and Padme and everybody else. But all of that crumbled not just for her, but for everybody. And we're a long way beyond that. We're 25 plus years beyond that, probably 30 years beyond that moment in season 5 of the Clone Wars. So a lot's happened to her since then. But also she has been kind of built up to be almost like the Gandalf character. There is that about her. You just have to wonder, one, whether a judgment is always right. And two, I just think, because Baylan Skoll obviously is there with that orange lightsaber, which looks incredibly cool, if he's an ally at some point in Ahsoka and then turn down another path, we don't know the status of the galaxy in terms of how many Jedi there are at this point, and also how many Sith, because Vader's gone and the Emperor is kind of gone at this point, as far as everybody knows. He ain't turning up again for another 20 odd years until the end of Rise of Skywalker, and then only briefly to the knowledge of the wider galaxy. Somehow he returned. Where do we find Ahsoka, as you say, and where does she put her trust? Because at this point, even though Luke has done incredible things, and to a lot of us growing up, he was the apex Jedi, we have learnt over the years that he's still got a long way to go on his training. His training was completely incomplete, and so he's got a lot still to learn. Ahsoka is far older than Luke, so she's further down the path. She was trained as Jedi should be trained. Luke was trained ad hoc. You know, he was only told what he needed to be told. You realise there were so many things that he never got told, and you wonder how much more he learned in between where we're seeing him in this current era and where we saw him in Return of the Jedi. And you made a great point last week when we talked about the Daisy film, when you said difference between Luke and Rey. I'm paraphrasing what you said, but you said the difference between Luke and Rey is that Rey read the books. You know, you kind of felt like Luke didn't really read the books. And once he'd gone to Acto, he just kept them. There didn't seem to be any attachment to them, to the point where he was happy to burn those damn things down. It was only Yoda that stopped him. You know, it's kind of an interesting mixture of motivations, I think, for Ahsoka and for other characters going into that show. It could be really fascinating.
Hi, this is Andy Seacom, otherwise known as Watto, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So last month, a whole bunch of Panther trackers and some Rebel Legion folks as well, including you, Mark, went all the way up to Blackburn to Star Wars Fan Fun Day. We had a wonderful, wonderful weekend, Dinner with the Stars, and then Star Wars Fan Fun Day, and we spoke to a load of cool people. And amongst those really cool people was Samantha Alleyne. She was the first female stormtrooper. You may not know that, but she was. And we sat down with her at her signing table, and we talked about all sorts of stuff, her career, her time in the Star Wars galaxy, and a few other bits and bobs. So this is us having a chat with Samantha Alleyne.
So we're here at Star Wars Fan Fun Day in Blackburn, Ewood Park. There's a football pitch behind us, but I'm sitting next to Sam. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Enjoying the show?
Oh, it's amazing. It's very busy, and I was actually supposed to be here a couple of years ago, but unfortunately COVID happened.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to finally be here, and I've heard lots of great things. It's been going for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's amazing. Really family orientated. So no, it's been a really good day.
You've been doing a lot of shows lately, obviously Celebration most recently,
yes.
and getting around and seeing different places, and now seeing Star Wars Fan Fun Day, which has got this awesome reputation. Is it everything you hoped it would be?
It's actually even better than I thought it would be. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be this busy. And yeah, there's been lots of engagement. I've had lots of fans come and see me. And yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and it's better than I thought it would be.
That's good. Oh, look at this, unacceptable. Now, what is new with you in your career? What's happening at the moment? Or what's happening in the recent past as well?
Well, I've been working on something that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Okie dokie.
That may or may not be Star Wars related.
Yes.
But yeah, lots of shows, lots of travelling. Had a little holiday because I needed some rest.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to after this next little batch of shows, because I'm off to Switzerland on Wednesday for Fantasy Basel.
Nice.
So if any fans are out there want to come and see me, I'll be in Switzerland. And then after that, I'm going to go and try do some more acting proper. Without the helmet on, actually saying words.
Okay.
And yeah, because I did The Witchfinder, which was on BBC, and that was my first acting credit. So I really want to get my teeth into that and, yeah, just launch my acting career a bit more.
So how have you found that? Because obviously, I've never done it, but, you know, when you're in a helmet, there's a certain specific requirement of what you need to do, which you're very aware of and familiar with now because you've done it so much.
Yes.
And for,
nearly 10 years.
Quite a while now, yeah. So when you're stretching your acting legs into doing something different, is that quite daunting?
Do you know what? It's not, because if I just show you... Sorry, darling, can I just... This photo here...
Yeah.
Prime example. This is a rehearsal for the Rise of Skywalker and the Sith Trooper armor. And if you look at my face, even though I'm about to be wearing a helmet, I'm acting. Like, you can see.
Yeah.
I'm like that.
Yeah.
And so, even when I'm underneath that helmet, I am pulling evil faces.
Right.
And I have been known to say a few bad words in particular battle scenes.
Can't believe that.
And when you're wearing the trooper outfit, you're embodying the evil character, and you're standing. It's about your stance.
Yeah.
So even though you kind of don't show it in the facial, your stance and
You're
everything.
emoting it.
Yeah, and it's still acting, even though. And the guys in the creature department, they have such difficult jobs because they don't have their own human faces, but the way they emote with their bodies and their the eyes and things.
Yeah.
It's still acting. It's just a different set of skills. But no, I feel like there isn't such a different process, because I think when you're an actor, you give it all to everything you do.
Yeah.
So no, I don't find it really weird to switch between the two. I just miss doing that more.
Yeah.
It's nice to actually have a script and lines, and I mean, I love this. But let's get the face out and say some stuff.
So when you're without the helmet, let's say, are you dialing it back? Are you dialing it up? How does that work? If that makes any sense.
It really depends on the character.
Yeah.
For that particular job, the Witchfinder, it was quite. It can. I mean, you can go all guns blazing, especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
And quite often the director will be like, "Yeah, not that much." That's happened to me before. Sometimes you need the subtlety. I worked on The Witcher as well. I don't know why there's this obsession with witches with me.
Yeah.
The Witcher and The Witchfinder. And that was much more subtle.
Yeah.
But The Witchfinder was a comedy, so it was quite exaggerated. So and I was being interrogated, and I was drugged, and sorry, Darth, can you be quiet, please? So that was a bit more exaggerated because it was a comedy.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the project and also the character.
Yeah.
So you kind of take it on a case by case basis, but I've been told that I'm a good comedy actress, and I've studied physical comedy.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to those sorts of roles where I can just really go crazy and be a bit stupid.
And also in the Star Wars galaxy, we've seen your face on screen a couple of times.
We have.
Would the opportunity, if it arose, interest you to do more there?
I mean, 100%. As we had the announcement at Celebration that there's going to be a film that takes place after the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
I would very much like to, if anyone's listening in Lucasfilm, I would very much like to bring this character back, Ali Samter. Maybe fly the X-Wing this time, so I didn't get a chance to actually fly the X-Wing. So that would be really fun.
Yes.
I'm all up for that. Definitely.
Good. I understand Mark has got a question for you, so I'm going to hand over the microphone.
I'm just going to ask Darth Vader to just go away a minute.
It won't
He's very loud.
He's only 20 foot away.
Hello, Sam.
Hello, Mark.
How are you?
My chauffeur. I'm
Oh.
good.
Yes. How's my favourite passenger?
Awake.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I'm very well. Having a great day.
6-hour drive, literally asleep for the whole thing. Very impressive, I have to admit. Okay. So, speaking of like all the different troopers that you've portrayed over the years, do you approach each trooper as a trooper, or does each different one have a kind of different kind of like character behind them? Like, does a Sith trooper behave differently to an FN trooper, to a mud trooper, to a stormtrooper?
Do you know what? I don't think so.
No.
I feel like when you work for the Empire,
Yeah.
you're kind of just evil, and I kind of try and embody that every time. And you know what? When you've got the helmet on, you forget what armor. It's just you're in that zone, and you're wearing a helmet, and you don't think, oh, it's the white one, oh, it's the Imperial, oh, it's First Order, oh, it's Sith. It's just I'm a trooper, and I'm straight, and we're all the same, and uniform, and evil, and we're the sort of the faceless entity of the Empire. So I just kind of, I just trying to portray that, because with Stormtroopers, a lot of the time over the years, we've been like the comedy value. If we look at the old bump in the head and aren't you a little short for... There's always been that comedy element. And I know with Andor, they really consciously wanted us to not be that. They wanted us to be evil, and they wanted it to look like... And I think it comes across as that. We were terrifying. And the fact that I actually hit someone in the finale. I shot someone and actually hit them. I think it really shows that we are evil and don't mess with us, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what's in my head. I'm very, like, I go into, like, Stormtrooper mode and I'm very straight and it's almost like now it's muscle memory. I've been doing it for so long, but it's always evil and
And does that happen when you put the armour on, or is it when the helmet goes over the head?
Oh, that's a good question. It's so weird because I'm so used to it. I don't really I'm going to say once the helmet goes on.
Yeah.
And even when the armourer passes me my blaster, it's when the helmet's on and then the armourer then it's like, and you assume the position and it's like back straight into it.
Yeah. It's been, 10 years since Star Wars started in Pinewood? And you
nearly 10 years.
Yeah,
so
nearly
it was 2014. So next May.
So they're celebrating that, for the next year. How have you found, like, women in Star Wars change over the last 10 years? You know, before there wasn't really many female stormtroopers, if any, and none of that was so kind of, present in the fandom. Have you found that actually by you being in part of the fandom and the community that actually that's enabled more members, more women to kind of like realise their dreams and actually can I understand that they can be a stormtrooper or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have to remember though that even in the 70s, the original trilogy, there was a very strong character in Princess Leia who was a woman, and she just, the fact that she turned around and said, like, I don't need rescuing, I'm not a princess, she was a very good example of a strong female character. But yes, you're right, there were, George Lucas has gone on record to say that there were female troopers in the canon back then, but in terms of the people inside the armour back then, they were all men. I've had that verified by Alan Austin. There were no females back then. And so, it was great for J.J. Abrams to finally come along and say, hang on a minute, this isn't right. And that's why this happened. It's been brilliant. There's been more and more of us. I'm kind of the one who always comes back and stays because it's not easy. Not just for Stormtroopers, we've had great characters. Captain Phasma. Mm-hmm. We've had Naomi Aki's characters strong, and then Jannah, and then like Kelly Marie Tran. There's so many strong female characters, Jinnah. So, and that's so great to see. And in terms of representation, I strong believe if you can't see it, you can't be it. Yeah. And I see it on a regular basis at cons when I'm speaking to fans. In fact, at Celebration, I met a lovely lady called Claire Campbell. She was quite emotional when she came to see me because she loved Star Wars, and she was 6. She wanted to be a stormtrooper, and she said to her brother that she wanted to be a stormtrooper, and he said, you can't be because you're a girl. And she said when she found out about me and she like cried because she was like, oh my God, a woman can be a stormtrooper and is a stormtrooper. She's a bit jealous that she's not actually one, but she's very happy with the fact that I exist. Yeah. And I think it's really important, we've got to show that. But I think Star Wars are really good at that, and always have been. Like I said with Princess Leia. But it's nice to get it all across the board, not just with the main characters.
Exactly, absolutely. Now you already mentioned that you were meant to be here back before the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah. Before the pandemic, also. We were meant to give you and induct you into Rebel Legion Elstree Base. So we have with us, on behalf of Rebel Legion Elstree Base, your honorary membership plaque.
Oh my goodness!
And I do in fact have a couple of patches as well to give you somewhere, which are in the pocket.
Thank you so much!
And you can tell, it was 2020, so just before the lockdown. Yeah.
Oh,
so
guys, thank you. Thank you so much.
As well.
This is an absolute honour, especially as I was Ali's hunter.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, that means the world to me. Thank you. And it's an honour. And I love you guys and I love the work you do.
We love you too.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm a bit emotional. I wasn't expecting that. Thank you.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
This past week, Esquire sat down with Harrison Ford and interviewer Ryan D'Agostino had a long and really fascinating chat with the main man, talking all about his motivations, his career, and obviously about Indiana Jones. During that conversation, Harrison, who swore like a trooper through the whole interview, it's absolutely hilarious, you must read it, did talk a little bit about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, why he wanted to do it, why he was keen for an ambitious, and from all accounts, it is a very ambitious, final movie, but does touch on the point that his character is older and he wanted him to appear to be older. Apparently there was a scene where he's riding on a horse on the subway platform in Manhattan, and as he finished the scene, he could feel hands all over his legs, and he said, I thought, what the f***? I felt like I was being attacked by gropers. I looked down, there's 3 stunt guys making sure I didn't fall off the stirrup. They said, oh, we're just afraid, we thought, blah, 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 and he says, leave me the f*** alone, I'm an old man. So he's very keen for Indy to be shown to be an older character, an older man. The years and the mileage have caught up with him. And my question mark is that obviously we've seen Indy in the original 3 movies as a guy in his sort of his late 30s, early 40s. And then we see him in Crystal Skull a fair chunk of the road further down when he's now into his 50s. And now we're seeing him as a 70-year-old in 1969. Do you think the world's ready to see an old Indiana Jones? Because Harrison seems to have really leaned into that. And I think probably because we get that opening 25 minutes of him back in 1944, I think it is, as a younger guy. So you can juxtapose the two. Do you think the world's ready to see an old and kind of tired, beat-up Indiana Jones?
I think you kind of have to, because I think if he is jumping around like he's still 50 or 40 and he's trying to pull off a conceivable, 86-year-old Indiana Jones, I think the suspension of disbelief will just be that little bit too much for a lot of people to take. So, I mean, I suppose obviously, we've not seen the film, so it's all speculation. I suppose it's how much they lean into that, isn't it? Like, if he gets off a horse and he's like, oh, my back, that's fine, Matt. But I'm sure he's still going to be able to take a punch or two. So I don't imagine he's going to suddenly get off the horse, walk 2 steps, accidentally trip over and break his hip. Or at least I hope not, because that will be a film. I don't know how I would feel if Indy were to die at the end of this 5th one as a way of saying that's it, job done, or if he just kind of rides off into sunset or gets beamed up onto an alien spaceship. But it kind of works, doesn't it? If he's going to be shown to be too old for this, it's probably time he gets to the end of the film, and the logical conclusion is to just leave it. Just kind of go, right, that's it. I'm hanging up my hat, hanging up my whip, and off we go into the sunset. Yeah. Which would be a much nicer kind of ending than doing some kind of a sacrifice, I think, anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like he's not had the best time from the little snippets that have come out, that he's changed work and he's now retiring, which you see in the trailer, and that he's, it's 1969, so it's like a whole new world. Man's just landed on the moon, and he feels very much the relic that he's been chasing for all these years. So, yeah. That's an interesting place to put him. And he mentions, actually, there's an interesting thing where he mentions about how he got injured. It was the scene from the trailer when he puts the hat over Mads Mikkelsen's face and punches the hat. But when he filmed the sequence, somebody was kind of in the way, so he had to adjust. And as a consequence, pulled the subscapularis muscle off his right shoulder, which shut the production down for a fortnight, and he had to sit out for 6 weeks. He's had plenty of injuries. Most of the stunts in Temple of Doom weren't him, because he madly wrecked his back riding on the elephants and spent a lot of time at physio at Old Trafford, believe it or not, being worked on back when they were making Temple of Doom. Force Awakens, of course, he got caught in the door. So he's had things happen to him. He's kind of known for it. And he does say that. The interviewer says, well, you've always been known for doing many of your own action scenes. And Harrison says, yeah, well, I'm also known for shutting movies down because I get hurt, which isn't something you want to be known for. But hey, shit happens. So he's quite open about these things, and it's nothing new. So I don't think that's particularly an age thing. I think that's kind of just a Harrison thing, because he throws himself into it. But I like the thought that you're going to see this young, as you remember him, kind of between Last Crusade and Crystal Skull era, Indiana Jones just going for it in that first opening sequence. I pray it looks as good as it appears to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the cool thing, isn't it? Because then you kind of have the Indy that we'll remember, or hopefully remember, and then also the realistic, the fact that he's moved on. I'm really looking forward to seeing this. I haven't booked my tickets yet, but it's definitely something that I need to work out when I can see it. So me and you can do a reaction chat.
Good shout. Okay, yeah, well, we will definitely prep for that. I will definitely keep you to that. It's out on the 28th of June here in the UK, 30th of June in the United States. and other territories around the world. As Mark just says, we'll be doing a reaction chat. Good news. And we'll be all over it on the site. We're piling indie news on at the moment. If you come to Fantha Tracks for Star Wars, just remember it's not just Star Wars, it's Lucasfilm stuff. So there's always going to be Willow, there's always going to be indie and other Lucasfilm productions. But until then, keep counting down the days until Dial of Destiny comes out, and we'll finally see how Harrison Ford knocks it out of the park with this final movie.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Fascinating news this week, and it's not new news because Ben Burt revealed this, believe it or not, at the original Star Wars Celebration Europe back in 2007. But it's been picked up and run with, possibly because John Wayne's grandson, Brendan Wayne, is now one of the bodies inside the armour of the Mandalorian in the TV show The Mandalorian on Disney+. It's very relevant that this clip has been picked up. Ben Burt talking about one of the sound effects that he used for, we used to call him Snoot Snoot, is now called Gurinden. It's the Imperial spy from the Mos Eisley scenes of A New Hope. But talking on stage at Celebration Europe back in 2007, he basically says, we had that character that kind of looked like a mosquito from the first Star Wars that we found we needed a sound for. I was wondering back a few months ago how I did it, because I keep notes and tapes, and I discovered it was an electronic buzzing which had come off my synthesizer that was triggered by a human voice. I listened to it and realised it was John Wayne. I had some loop lines in the trash from the studio that had been thrown away. So the buzzing was triggered by some dialogue like, all right, what are you doing in this town? Or something like that. So basically, the sound of Gurinden was triggered by John Wayne, and John Wayne's grandson is now the Mandalorian. Lots of weird connections, but what did you think when you read that? Because it kind of blew my mind.
It's one of those weird things where you can go, well, of course. Who else would would do that? But I mean, in some respects, it just goes to just indicate and remind us of the sheer brilliance that is Ben Burt in all his shapes and ways and forms, and especially when it came to sound design of A New Hope. When you kind of do sound design, and there's something that you can hear it in your head, and you just find it, and whatever works. And I think that's always a cool thing when you start to kind of like peel back the onion skin that is like the behind the scenes of Star Wars, and especially like the sound design, and that it's like, oh, okay, so there's like about 6 different sounds that go into the makeup of a TIE fighter and all that kind of stuff and what have you. And so it's just really fun that this has kind of come up again. I can't remember. It's one of those things that either I'm misremembering if I remember this from back in 2007, because I feel like I knew this, but I definitely can't tell you when or where I was told it. But I definitely saw Ben Burt at Celebration in 2007, so it's probably there. But I think it's fun and I think it's cool, and it's nice that there's now this kind of like this nice connection between A New Hope and obviously The Mandalorian with Brendan Wayne.
Yeah, I thought that was a fascinating thing, and probably the reason why it bobbled up again. But also, it very much speaks to, and it is genius, he won an Oscar for it, just the work of Ben Burt, because there's a consistency between all the sounds in Star Wars. So not only did he build a soundscape for Star Wars, he then added to it for Empire, and then once again for Jedi, and there's a wonderful consistency between all of them. And we spoke to David Collins not that long ago, and when we were talking to David in the interview there, he was saying how now they'll take a sound and they'll have to not just use that sound for a few moments on screen like you do in some of the Star Wars or some of the prequel trilogy or various things like that. Sometimes they have to expand it. And even to the point when they will go and do computer games, case in point, Revenge of the Sith, you see Felucia on screen for seconds, but in the game you can be on Felucia for hours, really. And so it was, how do you take the essence of what you heard in the film and expand that to become a soundscape that is sustainable for a period of time? And so I think it's fascinating when the guys that are doing the work now can now add all these new elements of the Star Wars soundboard, if you like, back in the day when you used to download the little sound clips and stuff, and just make it feel like it's part of that world. And it goes back to Ben Burt tapping with the nut and the spanner on the cable to the telegraph pole, finding the laser sound effect, or moving the cable behind the television to get the lightsaber sounds, and the printing press that was the AT-AT walkers, and just all the different sounds, all the creatures that all come together to make the Torn sound was a donkey, I think, and Chewie obviously there's a lot of bear and walrus in there. How these things all mix together. There's a tiger roar or a lion's roar in a TIE fighter. Again, David said about how the TIE fighter in Andor, for example, they added an extra element to the sound to make it make sense in that setting, in that canyon setting. So they're always tweaking and adjusting, but it's genius, isn't it?
Hi, this is David W. Collins, voice actor for Star Wars and sound designer at Skywalker Sound. You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
So for the second episode in a row, we have a listener's question, and it's come from Australia again, weirdly. This is from Jeff in Adelaide, and his question is, Given Pedro Pascal has now revealed that he only appears as the voice of the Mandalorian, could that potentially open the door for an animated Tales of the Mandalorian style series where he could fulfill the exact same function? If that ever happened, what other spin-off animated series would you like to see, and with what characters? So that's quite a broad question. Obviously, he's
very broad.
Yeah, it's kind of alluding to what we talked about last week about Pedro now is the voice, and Brendan Wayne, who we just spoke about, and Lateef Crowther in the Mando armor on set, and Pedro doing the voice. But the question, do you think there's the potential for them to do an animated spin-off? Do you think Favreau and Filoni are open to expanding the adventures of the Mandalorian, be it pre-episode 1 of the TV show or during the realms of the show? They seem fairly tight on what they want to show, and if so, Pedro being a part of it, do you think that's a potential?
I think it's definitely a potential, and especially in this day and age where they're trying to expand the Star Wars audience, you could even just have the ongoing adventures of Grogu and Mando, and just pitch it to a slightly younger audience. Doesn't necessarily need to fit into canon and stuff, and you can still get Pedro to kind of come and voice it, do micro shorts and all sorts of things. You've just seen the Spider-Verse, and we are so used to seeing Spider-Man as a live action superhero, but actually when they did something like the Spider-Verse, when that came out, and just completely turned the whole kind of concept on its head. Within Star Wars, we've been really lucky. We've had Visions and Visions Volume 2, but they are all fairly still like Star Wars, and I'm yet to find anything that has really put Star Wars completely on its head. Visions have got close a couple of times. It's still there's definitely more I think they could do. To get Pedro in for a day or a couple of days, or in fact, actually, you don't need to get him in. You just have a local audio studio where he is. If he's filming something else, he can pop into that. They can set up a secure line. He can record the lines. Job done. It's not that logistically difficult to do it. I mean, blimey, look at Ming-Na Wen. She recorded her lines for Bad Batch in her cupboard during lockdown.
Anthony Daniels did the same on Rise of Skywalker.
There's so much you could do. What now fits in with, I guess, the overall strategy? I mean, we've talked about it before. I mean, I'm going to steal your thunder. You talked about kind of like a Scooby-Doo version of like, the sequel trilogy with like Finn and Rose and all that going around the galaxy and stuff. But there's also, everybody's kind of banging on since really like 96, 97, like, X-Wing and, Rogue Squadron and stuff like that as a animated series. There's so much you could do. I mean, I'd love another Droids series in the style of original Droids, but just kind of obviously done in the modern era and stuff. Oh, yeah. So yeah, and actually, the Young Jedi adventures and stuff. I've watched all those, and they're quite nice. They're quite cute. I mean, very toyetic characters and very toyetic play settings and stuff like that. What do they call it? Was it like the Ninth Jedi or something from like Star Wars Visions from the first volume?
Yeah.
So that was the one to me that, if anything, said to me like, oh God, I want a series. And just because of the style it was done, that's the kind of animation that I grew up watching, like, Ulysses and like Lost Cities of Gold and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I would be well up for some Star Wars animation. And if you've got the voice actors and the main cast doing it, I think then it just adds weight to it, doesn't it?
It definitely does, and Marvel are doing this now. We're just in Spider-Verse, and obviously there's not a huge amount of overlap between the two, although there is definitely overlap. But that being said, with What If, a lot of the voice actors who play the characters in live action would then go and do their characters in animation. Not all of them, but a lot of them did. So there's definitely something in it there. But I think with Star Wars, I mean, with The Mandalorian, for example, it's not like Din Djarin is the most talkative guy in the world. And it definitely goes back to, I think, when Favreau comes up with the idea of The Mandalorian and it all starts to be pulled forward. It's quite obvious that a lot of what should have been Boba Fett became The Mandalorian. In Book of Boba Fett is a lot more talkative than we ever remember him being, because I think Din Djarin is so not a talkative guy. He's very much more like the Fett that we know. My point is, and of course they do 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 takes of every line because they want options. And you'd certainly want that with animated as well as with what they do in live action. But even then, it's not like Din Djarin is going to be giving, soliloquies and reams of dialogue.
No.
He's a fairly concise, very much the Yorkshireman word economy kind of guy. If you can say it in 3 words, say it in 3 words instead of 3 paragraphs, unlike me. So that would make life, I would say, a little bit easier in that sense. But beyond Mando as a character, sort of expanding on Jeff's question, there's other characters within The Mandalorian that would be interesting to see. I'd like to see a bit more about Grief Karga. And of course, they could all be folded in. And he does say, like a Tales of the Mandalorian. So that kind of hints at an anthology series, a bit like What If. So you could tell a Din Djarin episode. You could tell a Grief Karga episode. You could do that Cara Dune episode that tells you what she did next. And whether you use Gina Carano or don't use Gina Carano, that's entirely the choice of Lucasfilm. But, you know, there's definitely options. But even outside of The Mandalorian, I don't think that they're going to loosen the reins, as we've said before, with the storytelling around that Mandoverse. I think they're going to keep a real tight lid on it because it's been successful. We had Book of Boba Fett. Now we've got Ahsoka coming very soon. And after that, not long after Skeleton Crew, they're all part of the same timeline. We didn't get Rangers of the New Republic, but they've kind of hinted at setting that up at the end of season 3. So maybe that will still come at some juncture. So I don't know whether animation's going to fold into that. I'd love it to.
So thanks, Jeff. That was a really interesting question, and I'd love to see what actually happens in the next couple of years when it comes to animated releases. Keep our fingers and toes crossed that something comes very soon. So if you want to be like Jeff and live in Australia, then book a flight. But if you also want to send in a question, a listener's thought, or a theory, please do, because we love to hear from you. So Mark, can you let everybody know how they can get in touch?
If you want to be part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fanthatracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. That voice was recorded by John Wayne, no less. If you can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com, like Jeff did this week, like Paul did last week, and others have done for the past 5 years, unbelievably. You can get in touch and send in your listeners' questions. Comment, like, and share on any of our social media feeds at Fanthatracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. And check out our Fanthatracks Radio Friday night rotation. It's every Friday night at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Fan from Down Under, Planet Leia, last week's Planet Leia with Vivian Lyra Blair. Go and check it out if you haven't already. Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And every Tuesday, 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And that's me done for this episode.
Brilliant. Nice one, dude. That was a lot of information to take in.
It was a lot of information to put out, let's be honest.
I was going to say, exactly, yeah. Exactly, that as well. You can listen to us next week when we come back for a exciting episode 168 of Making Tracks. But until then, have a fantastic Star Wars week, whatever you get up to. And of course, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fanthatracks Radio, it's Collecting Tracks.